operating thing. Mick was an amazing musician, absolutely fantastic. Started playing traditional instruments, started playing mandolins, and great guitar player, could play the bass, play the piano, accordion, play anything. Brilliant, you know, worked very well with Ricky. And Smelly just was always just kind of natural, you know, naturally brilliant drummer. You know, it was fantastic. I mean, the EPs sort of bear witness to that. It's like Not a Fish EP, I think is tremendous.
I think it was early 82, if I remember rightly. They came back as Five Got Under the Sea with the cello player and everything. It was just incredible. I mean, it was completely different to Nun Attax mostly. It wasn't like a rock band anymore. It was just like the most bizarre but coherent. Like nothing went on for longer than 2.5 minutes. Completely focused attack of extreme Cork eccentricity with Donnelly's sensibility. For the first time, he was like singing in his Belfast accent some of the time, because of course he had lived there till he was 13 or something like that, and it was just unforgettable, really. I mean, that is the one thing that's like stamped on my head. They're not quite date stamped, unfortunately.
I mean, it was Donnelly roaring, but again, this, you know, as they got better with their playing and all that, and I mean, there was the core, the four, and then the three of them. You know, they could almost read each other's minds and music and stuff like that. You know, but there was a time when they had a cello player instead of a bass player, like, and that was amazing. That reincarnation was amazing. Like, you get these really just long, holding, deep bass notes, you know, and it just gave a whole different orchestral layer to the whole thing. So I mean, they were very open to ideas and stuff like that. There's people doing stuff like it today, and they're being called innovative, you know. It's, as I say, they were ahead of their time. And I don't know, it was kind of ironic, really, but their last single before Donnelly's accident, like, that was Enemy's single of the week, you know, and they were starting to get interest being shown in them. So who knows what would have happened.
The cello definitely gave them something, and I mean, she was a serious cello player. I don't know where they got her, but she used to play in the Irish Youth Orchestra. I remember meeting her one night in Dublin. We had gone to we'd gone to see the Clash in Dublin, and we got lost. And we were kind of wandering around up by Stephen's Green, and we met her, and she was there she was coming from the National Concert Hall with the coat, the dress, the cello and the music and everything. We were just kind of saying, fucking hell, like, Jesus, Five Got Under the Sea have gone up in the world. You know, we were saying, where are you coming from? Oh yeah, I had a gig tonight in the National Concert Hall. Oh yeah. How did it go? And then she kind of said that she played in the Irish Youth Orchestra as well. I was relieved, you know, because I'd have hated to miss them if they were playing there, you know. But I don't know where they found her.
We were at a play. Actually, Mick Lynch was in the play. Ona was playing the cello in the play, and we kind of a party after the play, and we asked her. We didn't think she'd say yes, right? And she turned up. She turned up with her cello. It was amazing, right? Here you are. Started playing, fantastic, and we decided to drop the bass then at that stage as well. Like, it worked. Stack was from Ballyhoig and Una's from Glanmire, and they'd be from completely different backgrounds to us. Like, we were coming from the working class Norrie background, completely different backgrounds. Like, but it seemed to work. It worked better. Stack would take the abuse better than Gertie, I think. But it seemed to work, and Una just carried on. It only exploded a few times, both bad language and sexist remarks and things like that. Like, but like, there'd be people jumping around the place, like, they'd be falling up on the stage, and punk rock was falling to the top of the cello, like, the cello was her life. Like, leave it alone.
I would say stylistically and musically, to them that was perfect. I mean, you couldn't have anything more spadgy than a cellist in what, you know, in a new wave band, punk rock new wave band, new wave spadgy band. Una, if I remember rightly, was a friend of theirs. I can't remember quite what the connection was. Because, of course, the thing about the Spadgy scene at its zenith in early to mid-1980 was that people who made me look like a fucking pauper were suddenly interested in what these groovy people from the north side were doing, you know. And for the first time in their lives, they learned to use words like fla and langer. It might have come out of that. I mean, Una wasn't like that. She was very, very different from them. If I'm not mistaken, like a really A-rated music student at UCC. It was like chalk and cheese, but they were doing this thing. They had this sort of processional dum da da dum da kind of feel about it. So you must have strings for that, darling. I mean, it was Brechtian, but they would urinate upon the very, you know, the word, you know.
We were actually working class snobs, basically. Like, we were from Grawn, we were from Churchfield, and we started associating like with like the Cahill now and all these people that were in college and everything like that. It was kind of we were actually the snobs. They weren't, like, do you know what I mean? Like, we thought we were above all them kind of people, and they were trying to be like us. We were the snobs, alright. The working class snobs, like from Grawn, like, you know, walking up the hill, like, and they all probably being collected by their daddies at the end of the night, like.
We are the Glee Club, come to all, pay for your fridge. We are do-goody doers with the Glee Club. In this vast, teeming metropolis, where the beach crowd go topless, and the Guardian are coupleless. Of course we're happy with the Glee Club, with the Glee Club.
It wasn't manufactured in any way. It was very genuine. Like, he just was fairly loopy, you know. And I suppose allowed the rest of us to be a little bit loopy then as well. You know? That side of us came out. I mean, this is all in hindsight. At the time, we wouldn't have said that it was Donnelly. We were doing it ourselves. Like, yeah, I mean, the days in the Ark and like all the bands that were happening, it was such a buzz. Like, you know, there were people were calling it the Lee beat at the time, you know, as opposed to the Mersey beat, because every band that came out had a different kind of a take on them, you know. They weren't quite your normal punk rock bands that were happening in Dublin, you know, who all seemed to sound the same, and each band that came out of Cork seemed to be, you know, they had their own take on it. And even now, listening back to some of the stuff from those days, I mean, the lads, you know, Nun Attax, 5 Go Down to the Sea, extraordinary musically. It really was exceptional. And his voice and his passion in his voice, and, you know, this is all, again, hindsight. At the time, it was just, yeah, they're doing their gig, we're doing ours, you know.
There was 4 or 5 bands in Cork then who were certainly more interesting than anything that was going on in Dublin. The bands in Dublin were still sort of at the stage of imitating what was popular or successful abroad, whereas bands in Cork were doing something that nobody else was doing. In a way, I've kind of used to wonder why it was that Dublin, like a much bigger city, wasn't capable of producing music of this calibre. I think 1 or 2 or 3, you know, half a dozen people in the scene can make a huge difference, because they just, if there's talented people who are just going for what they want to do, they stimulate others to do it, but they also raise the general standard, and they make people, you know, if there's 2 bands as good as Michael Disney and 5 Go Down and Nun Attax as they were then, go in a city, like, everybody else has to try and compete with that. And also, there wasn't the sort of thing that there was in Dublin of trying to. It was in its early days, but there was a sense that, you know, you could get signed, you could make a career out of this sort of thing, you could get somewhere. So bands were sort of trying to second guess A&R men a lot, and I don't think Cork bands had that. I think they felt they were just out in the edge of nowhere, and they didn't have that sort of thing that Dublin bands always have of trying to impress the industry. They just wanted to make music for themselves and for their peer group. But also, I think that they were intensely competitive and ambitious, whereas you could get kind of comfortable in Dublin because you could play a fair bit. There was an audience that was big enough to sort of